Proceed.
Yes, please join us in an attitude of prayer. God in heaven, we thank you for the blessings received. For those gathered here today, inspire our thoughts, discussion, and ideas as we seek to work together to ensure that the decisions made today benefit the residents of Clay County. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to roll call. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Carpenter.
Here.
Very well. We have a quorum. That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to the approval of this evening's agenda?
Commissioner, I move that we approve the agenda.
Motion's been made for the approval of this afternoon's agenda. Excuse me. Discussion. I do have an amendment, and I think I'm okay to roll these together because they have the same general item. And if I am off kilter on that, Counselor, let me know. I would like to make the motion to add under discussion items a Clay County African American legacy issue related to the utilization of county property request. And in addition, I would like to move the two items, so that would be in its place on number 8 on our discussion. And then I would further move that the two additional items, the ARPA funding and the road district settlements, being moved to just at the conclusion of our regular agenda prior to item number 12 on the agenda. So just to recap that, we would hear the Clay County African American legacy issue at number 8 on our agenda. The two additional items would be moved to just after the regular agenda items. The reason for that would be that we've got a lot of people here with a lot of issues they'd like to talk about, so we'd like to make sure that we are as respectful as possible of the time of our citizens who are joining us today. So, discussion?
Just that I support the amendment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any discussion from anyone else? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
And Commissioner Nolte.
Yes. That brings us back to our agenda, to this afternoon's agenda. Now, our afternoon agenda as amended. Further discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Carpenter, you're recognized to close.
Close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
And Commissioner Nolte.
Yes. I'm not used to voting. This is going to be a strenuous night for me.
Call your name.
Meeting schedule, Administrator.
Yes, Commissioner, the next commission meeting will be held next Wednesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. for a business session here in the chambers.
Thank you. Brings us to honorary resolutions. There are none listed on this evening's agenda. That brings us to discussion items. The single discussion item this afternoon until later on the agenda is the Clay County African American Legacy request to utilize county property. Ms. Administrator?
Yes, and I believe the applicant is here that would like to present some information. This is a timing issue of the request of the applicant. We just received the information today and wanted to share that with the commission. So that could be placed on next week's agenda for commissioners' consideration. So I believe Dr. Robinson is here to speak on this request to use county property for an event.
Thank you very much. And as the doctor makes her way to the podium, I would just like to take the opportunity to remind those who will be addressing the commission tonight to make sure that the button is pushed so that the light is green at the base of the microphone. Please speak directly and clearly into the microphone so that the recording devices can hear you, and also state your name as you begin so that we know who is speaking when we're listening to the audio-only recordings. With that, please proceed.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Cecilia Robinson. I serve as historian for the Clay County African American Legacy, and working at this time, we are working on the first state Juneteenth celebration holiday that was approved last year. And I'm going to be very brief. Last year, the State of Missouri Department of Tourism received $350,000 to celebrate Juneteenth across the state of Missouri. And Senator Lauren Arthur had worked with us, and we being the Clay County African American Legacy, received $25,000 to do our Juneteenth celebration. And I'm sure it was because of the fact that we were the first city in the state of Missouri and suburb to even celebrate Juneteenth celebrations. And so we've been doing it for over 22 years. So this year, we have decided to have a 2-day celebration that incorporates using both city and county property. And the city property that we're here today to ask about, and the county property will be in keeping with activities on Friday and Saturday. We're going to have a barbecue contest that is a part of with the Kansas City Barbecue Society, and we're going to host that down on the historic square on the lower level county parking lot. And that's going to be on Saturday afternoon. Prior to that Saturday morning, we are going to be dedicating the monument in Fairview Cemetery to over 750 African Americans who are buried there in both marked and unmarked graves, mostly in unmarked graves. So that morning, the ceremony will be at Fairview Cemetery, and then we will progress from there down to Rooney Justice Square, where the barbecuers will be on the parking lot and we will be across the street at the plaza with our activities. So we're asking for that. It is, I guess I should say, it's going to be a very important occasion for us. We're hoping to have the Masons from the state of Missouri here for a burial rites ceremony from all 6 houses in full regalia and all of that, hoping that everyone will come to that and then proceed down to Rooney Justice Square. So our paperwork says that we have to have our insurance and approval from the county that we can use county property for that celebration. Friday night, it will be a parade of Main Street in the historic Garrison District, the African American community there, and that is going to be on Friday night. But on Saturday, that's what we're going to do. But we need your permission and approval. So that is why I'm here today.
Thank you. Could you give
questions?
us, and I'll probably ask you to recap before you leave the podium, but could you go ahead and tell us again the dates, and is there a website or is there an
Okay.
online presence where information can be gotten?
Yes, all right. We are June 17th and 18th. That's Friday, June 17th. There will be a parade and maybe some historic trolley tours during the morning. That's June 17th, that's on Friday, and parade that night. I think it's going to start at the New Hope thrift store area, staging area there, and go up Main Street, where there will be a dedication of Sankofa bird sculpture that is a part of our project, the third phase of our project. And so that's going to be on Main Street, that's on Friday. On Saturday, the 18th, we will have the dedication of the memorial, Clay County African American Legacy Memorial, that will be out at Fairview Cemetery that morning at 9 a.m. And then by 11 o'clock, 11:30, we will proceed to the Rooney Justice Plaza area, where barbecuers will be there for the barbecue contest. It's a 4-hour contest, so we will need the property That morning from, well, some will be in here on Friday night, I'm sure, to get set up. But on Saturday morning, we will be using the property from 7 a.m. until approximately 1:30 or 2 o'clock, because by that time, the barbecue contest will be over. We will have given out the prizes, and everyone will be able to leave. So we will have vendors, food vendors, we will have exhibitors, vendors that will be around that area. And hopefully, we will have a great turnout for this. There will be a quilt walk that's going on at the same time. So there are a lot of activities that will be going on that day, but it will be busy around the historic Liberty Square.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to helping make the event possible. It sounds like a really great event. I'm just grateful to you and to the state as well, and Senator Arthur for helping secure the funds necessary to have a good Juneteenth celebration. And I was glad that the county was able to partner as well with Fairview at the cemetery, and just appreciate all the good work that.
Well, we appreciate the commissioners this time. Well, last year, the county approved and gave us $20,000 to build that monument, and so it is now coming into fruition. So we are happy to be a part of this, and for our community, for the state of Missouri, to show what we are doing in the area of reparations, reconciliation, equity, justice, and equality. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And by the way, before you leave, is there, for those who might want to volunteer or for those who might want to participate, is there a place where you would want them to contact particularly? If you have a place for participants or volunteers, or?
A web page that will
Go ahead and go to the,
Facebook page, but we do have a website, but we will get that to you so that you can put it out before next week.
and we will be putting this on our regular agenda for our next meeting, I believe.
And I think the request is going to be to pass it on first read next week, if the commission is willing to consider that.
And I think that's something we should consider. I think I would like to take it up at that meeting so that we have all commissioners present. But that's certainly, I think, the intent that we have.
And Commissioner, may I inquire just a couple questions as well,
Sure.
just to make
Please.
sure that there's no misunderstanding? Doctor, you mentioned Friday night. The parking lots will be in use by county employees until 5 o'clock on a Friday. They'll empty out pretty quick.
Oh, Doctor,
Okay.
would you go ahead and use the microphone so we can all hear? Thank you.
Yeah, they will not be coming in. When we posted on the a website for the applicants and everything, they will know that they will not be able to come in before 6 o'clock.
Perfect. And then my second question or observation is, it looks like you're requesting the area, the fountain and the Rooney Plaza there. Now, some of that land is city land. The fountain, for example, is city, so that's not something that we have control over.
Right, we've already had our paperwork.
Perfect.
We've already done the paperwork for the city. They're just working on fine tuning some bullet points.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Very well. With that, is there any further discussion on this issue? Is staff satisfied as far as where we are? And then, Mr. Counselor, if that sounds right, then we will take it up at our next meeting, and then it's certainly, I think, our intention, but we would then make a determination then as to whether to take immediate action on it. Is that?
That's correct, yeah. And
All
it
right.
will need to be unanimous next week for that to happen.
Very good.
And for clarification then, is the commission desire to have that on regular or consent?
I think regular, because if we put it on consent, that means it is not going to be discussed. And I think I would like to, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is it allows us to once again put a little more publicity to the event. So does that sound consistent with what you
Yeah, I
like?
think regular makes sense. Thanks.
Very good. That brings us to, so that is the discussion item. Further discussion items will be later in the meeting. Public hearings, we have no public hearings listed. There is no consent agenda this evening. That brings us to our regular agenda items, of which we have a fair number. First on the agenda is 2022-92. Administrator?
Yes, Commissioners. Resolution 2022-92 is a request by resident John Falls Bennett for a waiver of penalties and interest on taxes. There is information that is attached in your packet. I believe Assessor Baldwin is prepared to talk about this, and in this particular instance, both the assessor and the collector are recommending to waive the penalty and interest. I do not believe that Mr. Bennett was able to join us this evening or this afternoon as the applicant, but I believe the assessor can provide some additional information for the commission.
Very well. Mr. Assessor.
Thank you, Commissioners. Tracy Baldwin, Clay County Assessor. This was actually an error on the assessor's office. The waiver that the taxpayer had mentioned in the form was just not activated by our office for some reason. So there was an error on our office for this.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the assessor?
No questions, thanks.
That being said, is there any further comment to be made? Seeing none, I think because this involves expenditure of monies, we would be looking at putting this on regular agenda with the box approved check. Is that sound acceptable?
Works for me, thanks.
Very well. So 2022-92 will be on next week's regular agenda with the box approved having been checked. Brings us to 2022-93. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-93 is also a request for a waiver of interest and penalties on taxes by property owner Mr. Carity. I do not believe that he is able to attend this afternoon. There is information in your packet. The request is to waive the interest and penalties, and that totals an amount of $703.32. There is information in your packet from the applicant regarding the circumstances, and I do believe that Assessor Baldwin is here to provide additional information to the commissioners.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioners. Tracy Baldwin, Clay County Assessor. This particular item on the agenda, the homeowner was notified June 16th, and I did provide a letter in the packet. June 16th of 2021, that their parcel number was changed. And also at the bottom of this letter, if you read, if you have a mortgage on your property, you might want to verify your mortgage company of this change to expedite payment of 21 taxes. This is also scanned into our software to the property that it was sent out to. I did talk with our GIS department that handled this. The letter would have went out the next day after it was printed. So there was a letter informed to the taxpayer of the change.
And that was the only change that was contemplated, was the actual rather lengthy string of numbers was the only change on that bill as far as information.
Certain areas develop, it's not a rare issue, but it is more rare than other circumstances. But we do have to move parcel numbers around based off development in certain areas. So it does happen from time to time, but we do have a letter, like I said, that we do let the homeowner know.
And there was no change either in the address location nor the amount of money to be paid?
No, the letter, it clearly states, we sent the letter to 910 South LaFrenz Road, which is the address.
Okay, Commissioner Carpenter?
And one thing I did want to point out on that also, the payment wasn't received until, I believe, June 7th, or March 7th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick question. In terms of these parcel numbers changing and having to send out the notice to a homeowner, is it very common, and is this a common occurrence that people end up missing their tax obligation as a result?
This is the first one that I've recalled that somebody had not gotten their letter or not noticed the letter. It is, like I said, it isn't a everyday thing that happens, but it is fairly common. In a year's time, there are parcel numbers that get moved because of splits or combinations or something like that in a certain area, so we do have to change those numbers.
Okay, and so are we talking like a handful a year, or are we talking more like hundreds a year?
I would say it's probably more in maybe 2 handfuls. I don't know that it's over hundreds. I didn't actually ask that number, but it's not like I said, it's not a really rare thing that maybe you have 5 or 10 in a year, but I would assume that we have probably 25 to 50 a year that could change.
Understood. Thank you.
I have a question of council. Obviously, in the previous issue, we had that put onto regular agenda with the box approved, checked, and before we finally pass one way or the other, a box needs to be checked. At this point, is there a particular problem if we leave it unchecked and make that determination at the next meeting?
You know, actually, at the work session, I only asked that there be direction given on the box if we're putting it on consent.
I
If
see.
it's going on to regular next week, we'll take it up at that point. So no, my preference would be to not give direction on which box to check if you're putting it on regular.
Gotcha. All right. Is there any more, are there any more comments? Okay, seeing none, then 2022-93 should go on our regular agenda. Very good. That brings us to 2022-78, Administrator.
Yes, Resolution 2022-78 is consideration of a contract with the Clay County Economic Development Council for professional services, any amount not to exceed $100,000. And I believe that David Slater is here from the EDC. The agreement has been signed and executed by the EDC, and so it is awaiting commission approval, and once that is completed, then we'll begin the process to submit the funds to the EDC.
Very good. Mr. Slater, if you'd like to proceed.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Nolte and Carpenter. Before I proceed, I'd like to thank you both for your involvement in the EDC and the Clay Plat development, the lending arm of that. Commissioner Carpenter takes that seat. Clay EDC, I've been there now 17 months, and we've made, Julie Lewis just passed out information. Julie has been just really good, and we've gotten the EDC pros from the different cities across the county. We're working together because it's a team thing, and we're going to hopefully expand that into the Northland, so it's a Northland thing. But we have our goals, and you guys are aware of them. We just want to make sure that we get the best utilization of your money. It does not go to, we're using a lot of this on a study for what we call the 587 project, but we also need money for a housing study, which Commissioner Nolte and I discussed this morning with Julie quite a bit. And then we also are talking about maybe a spec building at the airport so we can fully utilize that. That's a really good asset. If you haven't been out there, that's quite a little operation. And we're just asking for permission, and if you got any questions or concerns, we're doing our best. We're doing things differently, but we're getting things done. And we're doing it because we're getting your help and support, both financially and your input.
Thank you very much. Certainly, the Clay County EDC has a countywide mission, which is one of the parameters that we look at when awarding these funds. And also, I'm certainly, both professionally and personally, happy that we are, I hope, back onto a good track, and I believe we are with our relationship between Clay County and the Clay County EDC. So I'm looking forward to that relationship continuing and expanding.
Thank you. And you all got a letter, if anybody in the audience would like one, we can get one too, but I didn't want to read that. You guys can read it on your own. But I did send you both an email along with Commissioner Thompson about 2:30 this afternoon. We need to talk about the highway system in Clay County, and maybe we can do that at an EDC committee meeting, but we need to get on the same page because it's, I know KDOT has made a priority. They have what's called RAISE grants. It's a new federal funding thing, and their only KDOT ask for the RAISE funds is the 92 highway bridge into Leavenworth. And we've got a 2-lane roller coaster similar to what, if you've been around Clay County a long time, Berry Road was 30 years ago. And we need to get that fixed. We got an issue with 291, way too much construction for a 2-lane road between basically Flintlock Road and 435. And just things like that we need to get on the agenda, get them pushed, and Commissioner Nolte and Auditor Hurlbert and I can get them through the MARC process. And so let's do it as a team.
Well, thank you very much. And like I said, I would look forward to the entire commission being involved and certainly working together to make sure that we're doing our best job for Clay County. Commissioner Carpenter.
Just thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to the highway discussion. Obviously, there's a lot of potential dollars out there at this time, and you're right, we ought to be working together to make sure we get them invested here on important projects. And as it comes to helping fund the EDC, I really believe in y'all's mission, and I'm glad it's being helped by you, frankly. So thank you, and look forward to supporting this.
We appreciate your support. Thank you very much for your time.
Very well. If there are no other questions or comments, we will put 2022-78 on our regular agenda for next week. By the way, just because it just occurred to me, we have a number of people here who are not typically attending these meetings. What we are doing right now, the process we are going through in going through our regular agenda is putting things for next week's meeting. Regular agenda means they will be up for another discussion similar to what we're having now. Largely, those are issues that involve the expenditure of money or that have any degree of controversy attached to them. We will certainly at some point be putting things on the consent agenda. Those items will be bundled together, considered as a group, and then voted on as a group. So that is the exercise we are going through that will be then culminate in next week's meeting. With that, Administrator, we are ready for 2279.
Yes, Resolution 2022-79 is also a contract for consideration for professional services with the Northland Neighborhoods Incorporated Agency, and Deb Herman is here and would like to discuss their activities.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And I want to thank the Commission for your prior support and hopefully present support. Northland Neighborhoods has right now 99 member neighborhoods throughout the Northland. One of the things that we utilize Clay County money for the most is home repair. In the last 2 years, we've done over $1 million per year in home repair for low-income folks. Those home repairs can be all the way from installing ramps to HVAC to roofs. I think both of you have been in our office and seen some of the work that we've done and are familiar with it. But it is very, very common. I know I called Commissioner Nolte a couple of weeks ago because, we had an elderly woman in Excelsior Springs who got up in the morning and her furnace didn't work. And it's always a real telling sign when they say they can't get the pilot to light. If you still have a pilot on your furnace, it's probably very, very old and probably should be replaced. But we're very happy to provide those services and continue to leverage Clay County dollars with other dollars to make it go just as far as it can go. Right now, we have 9 home repair programs helping everyone that we can. We also do a lot of convening of meetings and bringing citizens together around topics of interest in Clay County. Have been very successful with our Focus Vivian Road effort, which we hope to see some real success come out of that shortly. So I would be glad to answer any questions. I know you've got a full agenda, and always open to meet and talk about anything else you'd like us to work on.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Carpenter.
Just look forward to moving these dollars to y'all. I'm especially grateful for your focus on sort of the southern part of the county and some of the more aging neighborhoods. I think that's going to be an ongoing project for years and decades to come, and we need organizations like NNI doing the work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any more discussion or comment? If not, then 2022-79 would be on our regular agenda for next week. Very good. 2022-80, Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-80 is consideration of a contract for professional services with Rebuilding Together Kansas City. I do not know whether a representative from the agency is here this afternoon, but again, this is a similar program in which the county has funded in the past with this agency that also assists with home repairs for neighborhoods in Clay County.
Is there anyone who would like to speak on this issue from the public? Very well. As long as I've been here, and certainly prior to my service here, there's been a good and positive relationship with Rebuilding Together Kansas City, and so certainly the opportunity for us to continue that positive relationship is one that we're certainly happy to be looking at. Commissioner Carpenter.
Yeah, no, we got some additional ARPA funds to Rebuilding Together as well, and I was spoken in favor of that and look forward to getting these funds to them as well. They do a lot of important work.
Very good. So with that, 2022-80 will appear on next week's regular agenda.
Sounds good.
Very good. That brings us to 2022-94. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-94 is consideration of a contract for professional services with Clay County Soil and Water Conservation District. And again, I'm not sure that we have a representative from the agency, but this, again, is a program that the county has participated in. This particular agency provides technical assistance to Clay County residents regarding soil and water conservation practices, among other items. And so this is a not to exceed in the amount of $5,000.
Very good. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing none, Commissioner Carpenter?
No comment, thanks.
With that, again, another long-standing relationship. So 2022-94 will appear on next week's regular agenda. That brings us to 2022-91. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-91 is approval of a payment with the University of Missouri Extension Administration in the amount of $81,720 for the 22 fiscal year. I do not know whether a representative is here from the University Extension or not. Again, this is a long-standing relationship that the county has had with the Missouri Extension.
That is correct. Once again, something else that we've been involved in, and certainly the commission has a seat on that board, so we are able to interact positively and also to maintain our oversight of those county funds. Commissioner Carpenter.
Yeah, no, I support investing with the extension once again. So, thanks.
Are there any further comments? Seeing none, 2022-91 will then appear on next week's regular agenda. That completes that category, so that brings us to some issues that are grouped together. I believe 2022-81 and 82 are companion items. Administrator?
That's correct. Resolution 2022-81 and 2022-82 are companion ordinances for a preliminary and final plat for Dean Acres, and Planning and Zoning Manager Jones is here to provide additional information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. This is a preliminary and final plat for a property I pulled up on the screen. You can see it's outlined in yellow. This is 122nd Street to the north, 33 Highway to the west, and 69 Highway to the south. So this proposed lot is 25 acres-ish. It's being subdivided from a larger property that meets one of our exemptions that would not be included in the plat. So we're talking about creating one additional lot, which would allow one house on the 25 acres. It's located in our urban services tier, which the comprehensive plan guides that we should do 10 plus acres in this area, which this 25 acre lot obviously meets. We are not doing a rezoning because lots that are 20 plus acres can keep their agricultural zoning. The applicant received all their outside agency approval, which included Highway Department, Water District, and Public Health Center and Fire District. The one unique thing that I want to point out is at the very front of this property, there's a large structure that was built years and years ago that is actually partially in the county right-of-way. So you'll see one of the conditions is that the portion of the building that's within the right-of-way be removed before the plat is recorded. The applicant has decided to demo the whole building. You can see it's almost on the road at this point and is a site distance hazard. So that's the one unique thing about this property. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval with that one condition that we discussed. Susan Dean, the applicant, is present, and I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Thank you. Commissioner Carpenter?
No questions, thanks.
If the applicant would like to make comment, and just so everybody knows, certainly the applicant and after that person, anyone else who wants to make comment on this item are free to do so. It is not required the applicant make comment if they so choose, but we certainly want to make sure we afford them that opportunity. Would the applicant, if present, care to make any comments? Okay. The applicant raised her hand and indicated she did not feel that she needed to make any comments. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments related to this issue? Very well. Mr. Jones, I assume that there has been zero controversy on this issue received by your office or that you're aware of?
That is correct. No opposition leading up to or during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
So I think this qualifies if it's the will of the commission that we put these two items on consent.
I support that.
Very good.
Marked approve. There you go.
Well, thank you. There you go. Very well. 2022, 81, and 82 will be on next week's consent agenda marked approved. That brings us to 2022, 83, 84, and 85. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022 83, 84, and 85 are companion resolutions regarding the rezoning, preliminary plat, and final plat for Potter's Pride. Again, Planning and Zoning Manager Mr. Jones is here to provide additional information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is a rezoning preliminary and final plat for a 3-lot subdivision off 188th Street in Old BB. I've got it pulled up on the screen again. It's outlined in yellow. So basically what's happening here is we're taking 2 lots. This in green exists as 1 lot right now, and this down here in green exists as 1 lot. And what we're doing is we're moving property lines. If you see, there's a house right here on Lot 2. Lot 2 is going to acquire a little more acreage to the north to get that property line from being so close to their house. Lot 1 is going to lose a little bit of acreage, and then we're also creating 1 additional lot here listed as Lot 3 that does not have a house. So we have a house on Lot 1, a house on Lot 2, and there'd be 1 additional house on Lot 3. Lot 1 and 2 are both between 10 and 20 acres. They would be rezoned to our R1 zoning, which is residential rural. That's our standard for lots that are between 10 and 20 acres. Lot 3 is roughly 6 acres. It would be zoned R5, which is residential ranchette. That's our standard for lots between 5 and less than 10 acres. Each area would include an agricultural land preservation. That's a tool that we use to keep a portion of the land natural. Basically becomes a no-build zone. The applicant gets to pick that area. In this area, and each lot has an ALP area. For this proposed subdivision, they've decided to protect this stream area, and I just turned on the floodplain. You can see the floodplain in that area. That's not obviously an area you're going to build anywhere or anyway, but they've decided to put their ALP to protect that area, so you can't build or knock down trees in that area. This property is located in a rural low-density tier, which the comp plan guides us. We can do 5+ acres as long as we do the agricultural land preservation. Each of these lots is larger than 5 acres. This case, since it was a rezoning, was noticed in the Courier Tribune, and adjacent property owners were sent certified letters. There are 5 rezoning criteria, which start on page 1 of the transmittal, which review and decision-making bodies should consider those 5 criteria with any rezoning case. The applicant received all their outside agency approvals. The ponds on the property were inspected and inspected to be in good condition. And I will point out one of those, the soil and water item that was previous to this, part of that $5,000 that the county gives to them is used to do these free inspections for our planning and zoning cases. So anytime we have a pond on a property, that agency will do an inspection and let us know if there's any issues. So we appreciate that. There was no opposition leading up to or during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval with a couple conditions in Exhibit A. Kathy and Don Cheney, the applicants, are present, and I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Commissioner Carpenter, do you have any questions of Mr. Jones?
I do not, thanks.
If the applicant would care to comment, we'd certainly be happy to hear what they have to say. Oh, there we go. The applicants indicate that they do not have any comments they would like to make at this time. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this issue at this time? Seeing none. It doesn't look as though, once again, Mr. Jones, there's any controversy attached to this. Am I correct?
That is correct.
I think perhaps that unless there's any objection, 2022, 83, 84, and 85 should appear on our consent agenda next meeting. Very well.
Marked approve.
Marked approved, thank you.
We're going to get one of these days.
You know, I'm glad you're here to keep me on the straight and narrow. Thank you so much.
But no, I think that makes sense. Thanks.
Very well. That brings us to items 2022, 86, 87, and 88. Please proceed.
Resolution 2022 86, 87, and 88 are companion resolutions for the rezoning, preliminary, and final plat for the Walker Ranch proposal, and Planning and Zoning Manager Kip Jones will provide additional information.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is a rezoning preliminary and final again. I've got the property pulled up on the screen. This is roughly 19 acres with an existing house in the blue shaded area, Lot 2. The proposal is to create one additional lot, which would be 4.99 acres, listed as Lot 1. So the applicant's family member can build a house on Lot 1. So this one's a little bit unique. So we've got a couple different things going on. We've got a railroad track to the east, and then if I zoom out, we've got large acreage to the west. So this is located in our urban services tier, which if we look at the comp plan, that guides us that we should do 10+ acre lots in this area. So I just told you we're doing a 4.99 acre lot. So obviously this lot does not meet the guidance in the comprehensive plan. This was kind of quite the process to get to this point, is we looked for any way to subdivide this and meet all the county's rules and regulations. With the limiting of the railroad tracks to the east, we proposed to the applicant that they should see if they could buy a little acreage and get a little more road frontage from the property to the west, because we have two issues with this. We have that the comp plan calls for 10+ acre lots in this area. Obviously we have 19 acres, so we can't get to that 10 acre minimum for each lot. And then also for 10 acre lots, the land development code calls for 300 feet of road frontage per lot. They have less than 600 feet of road frontage. They attempted to purchase some more land and were unsuccessful. So we came up with what you see in front of you today. And I'll be honest, that's a little bit of a compromise. And there's a reason we went down to 4.99 acres. So lots that are 5+ acres require that 300 feet of road frontage. If you go down to less than 5 acres, it kicks you down to an RU zoning district. That RU zoning district, we don't use a whole lot, but it's unique because it lessens that road frontage requirement from 300 feet to 140 feet. So that's why you see this lot having less road frontage. It meets the road frontage requirement for the zoning. Lot 2 meets their road frontage requirement for its zoning district, but Lot 1 does not meet the guidance in the comprehensive plan. Staff recommended denial of this case to the Planning and Zoning Commission due to the fact that this lot size does not meet the comp plan. During the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the applicant presented their case. Planning and Zoning Commission had discussion about the comp plan requirements, the LDC requirements, and then they also, I'm going to zoom out here, they looked at the surrounding areas. So exemptions have been made in the past. Now, we cannot ask for a variance from the comp plan. The comp plan's more of a guide than you have to do it this way. So what the Planning and Zoning Commission did, they looked at the surrounding area, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see better. And the applicant also did some research as well, and they came up with that there's 26 lots within I think it's a 3/4 mile area that are less than 5 acres. And when my map updates, I'll show you some of those. There's actually a 1 acre lot down the road and across the street, and then there's a bunch of 3 to 5 acre lots about a half mile east. So the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that this was in a unique enough area and met the changing conditions of the area that they voted to approve the application. And I'll zoom back out because this is, I said it's in the urban services tier, but it is still highly rural as well. It's just north of the county airport. So you'll see once this updates, the county airport is just to the southwest. And I went too far out. So the airport's right in here. This case was also noticed in the Courier Tribune, has the same 5 rezoning criteria. The applicant did receive all their outside agency approvals, and other than that lot doesn't meet the 10-acre minimum, the lots meet the other standards. So, like I mentioned, no opposition was received during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Commissioners voted 4-0 to recommend approval with the 2 conditions. I would be happy to answer any questions that the Commissioners may have, and then Teresa Walker, the applicant, is present as well.
Thank you, and I appreciate the explanation on the rather unusual configuration of the lots. I kind of was wondering about that a little bit. Commissioner Carpenter, do you have any questions?
Just one. In terms of the exceptions that have been made in the past, in terms of deviating from the comp plan in the area, do you have any sense of like how recent those deviations were?
Yeah, so we had, last year we had 3 6-acre lots that were approved in a 10-acre area. So I wouldn't say it happens a lot, but it happens a couple times a year, I would say.
And I'll be more clear, I'm sorry, in terms of this area specifically, though.
In this tier or this specific area?
Well, you said within 3/4 of a mile there were 26 lots that deviated from the comp plan, is that right?
There's 26 lots that are between 3 and 5 acres. Now, those were done under previous regulations,
That's what I'm trying to get at.
and I believe they met the regulations at the time.
I see.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I'm not aware of any exceptions that have been granted in this immediate vicinity.
Got it. Thank you.
If the applicants are present, would they care to comment on the issue at this time? Please go to the microphone, that way we can, and it'll be on the recording, but thank you.
Yes, I'm Teresa Walker, and I think Kip covered everything that, unless you have any questions for me.
It sounds to me like you had made an attempt to be in compliance by trying to purchase the land to the, I guess that's the west of your property there, so that you would be in compliance, and that was unsuccessful.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter?
Oh, no questions. I just appreciate the information from Mr. Jones, and I look forward to next week's follow-up discussion on it, especially with the Eastern Commissioner getting her input, since this is the Eastern District.
You're actually, first off, is there anyone else who'd care to comment on this issue? Seeing none. Yes, you're going the same place I'm going, and that is, since this has some degree of an unusual circumstance to it, I think holding it on regular so that the Eastern Commissioner has the opportunity to weigh in and give her thoughts, I think is the best move to make. So
Agreed.
with that, 20, 22, 86, 87, and 88 will appear on next week's regular agenda. That brings us to 2022-89. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-89 is a consideration of a conditional use permit for Tri-Circle Stables. And again, Planning and Zoning Manager Kip Jones is still manning the computer and will be happy to share some information with the commissioners.
The Kip Jones show continues on. Mr. Jones, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Thank you, Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager, and it's a sad day, let me tell you. So this is a conditional use permit for a stable. I'm not going to go into the business plan portion. The applicant is present. It can share some more information on how they plan to operate the stable. I just want to go over a couple code-related items. I do have the property pulled up on the screen. You can see it's outlined in yellow. It's approximately 40 acres. This is the Clinton County line just to the north, so it's about as far north as you can get, and it's just east of J Highway. There's several sections of land development code that deal with a conditional use permit. Basically, the use table tells us that a public stable requires a conditional use permit, and then there are criteria as part of that conditional use permit, similar to the rezoning criteria, and you can see those criteria on page 2 of the transmittal. This property is located in the natural resources tier because it is located so far north in the county. As I stated, the applicant has submitted a business plan. The applicant has supplied all required documentation. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission felt that they met all the standards to operate a stable and met all the code requirements. We have not received any opposition to this case leading up to or during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the conditional use permit. I will remind the commissioners a conditional use permit does have an expiration date. We proposed 10 years on this one. That's been typical for a stable. And then there's quite a few conditions. That's pretty normal for a conditional use permit to have some conditions on it. If we would ever receive code complaints on it, we would research those code complaints, and if they were in violation of those conditions, we would bring the case back before the commission, where it could be, the CUP could be revoked. But we limit them to number of horses, cleaning up manure, not devegetating the property, things like that are considered with a stable. But there are 9 conditions. We also look at parking and things like that for the folks that stable their horses there. But I would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and the applicant, Courtney and David Majors, are present as well.
Commissioner Carpenter, do you have any questions of Mr. Jones?
No questions, thanks.
I think that's pretty straightforward. If the applicant is present and would care to speak, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Courtney Majors. My husband David is here with me as well. We started this in October with a friend of ours. It is a partnership. Currently, the owner, as you'll see on the documentation, her name is Becky Keith. She came to us in October with an opportunity as an investment opportunity for her, and something that, as a little girl that grew up with horses, has always been our dream. As someone who has owned horses in the Kansas City area the last 3 years, we discovered there's wait lists everywhere. And when 40 acres came available, we wanted to jump on it. Our goal, especially being so close to Smithville, is to create that family-friendly atmosphere, that sense of community where kids and teenagers have somewhere decent to come go over the summer. And we'll have our own horses as well. In our business plan, we have about 25 boarders between stable boarding, dry lot boarding, and pasture boarding.
Let's see, you're of course familiar with Exhibit A and the 9 conditions that were attached. Are there any of those that you have concerns about that you'd like to speak to and address specifically?
No, sir, not at all. I think they're very fair and right in line with our business plan and how we intend to be good stewards and keep the land as usable as possible, and do our yearly fertilizing, yearly rotations of letting the pastures be at rest. And our goal as business grows is to, maybe buy more property, to create hay fields and things like that.
Commissioner Carpenter?
No, it sounds like a great plan. Thanks for the information.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? I think it's a neat project, actually. The only question I have is, do we want to go ahead and hold this one also so that Commissioner Thompson has the ability to weigh in, since it's a little more complicated? That's the only thing that occurs to me right off.
I mean, I'm comfortable with consent. She can always pull it off if she wanted to, but it sounds like a pretty non-controversial project to me.
It does sound non-controversial. No, there has been no negative comment made, Mr. Jones?
That is correct.
All right. I am fine with putting that on for consent then, and we might, Administrator, if you would apprise the Commissioner Thompson that is on consent, if she would care to examine that more closely, that's fine, but both Commissioner Carpenter and myself see no real concerns that we have that raises, so we'll put those 3 items on for consent on our next meeting. That brings us to... Thank you. I seem to have a thing about not putting that on there. Yes, please. That would be great. All right, so that brings us to 2022-89, Administrator. Oh, wait a minute.
90.
Yes.
Resolution 2022-90 is consideration of approving a transfer of deed from the county to Richard and Linda Schmidt. And again, Planning and Zoning Manager Kip Jones will provide information for the commission.
Please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this one's a little bit unique. So I've got it pulled up on the screen. So we platted this property very recently. It was this year where we created these 4 lots. You see this little triangle area down across the road was actually included in that deed because it was just part of that 40-ish acres. So what we are proposing, and I'm going to zoom into that area, what we are proposing is so it was noted as right-of-way on that plat, this whole area down here. But the County Highway Department determined that they only wanted a certain amount of that right-of-way. So basically, what we're proposing is once the county takes its right-of-way, and that's a really bad drawing, this area becomes right-of-way, and then we're proposing to deed the little leftover section, which is about I think it was like 0.27 acres, deed that to the Schmidts, who also own this property over here. And their plan is to replat this property and have this be included in that plat because it touches their other land. So that's what we're proposing. We submitted a deed that we had the Assistant County Counselor review and okayed that deed. And what would happen is if this is approved, we would have the presiding commissioner sign the deed, and then we would have the Schmidts record that deed over at the Recorder of Deeds office, and they would provide us a copy of that. I'd be happy to answer any questions commissioners may have, and the Schmidts are, I believe, present as well.
Could you zoom out just a little bit on that map, please?
Is that far enough?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, I think I've been on that stretch of road, so I was trying to bring it up in my memory, so that helps to give me that context. Thank you.
And this is 162nd and Bauman Road.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter?
No questions. Thanks.
If the applicant would like to comment, please feel free to do so. Okay. Once again, it sounds pretty straightforward. This is, I assume, fine, in spite of the fact that it makes the transfer of land, Mr. Counselor, that still is okay for consent agenda, is that correct? It is. Very well. Unless there's any objection, I would recommend 2022-9 to be on consent.
I support that, yep.
That brings us to 2022 Ordinance 9, Administrator.
Yes, 2022 Ordinance 09 is proposed language to amend the 2011 Land Development Code. There are 2 particular topics in the proposed amendments. One has to do with beekeeping, and the other has to do with accessory buildings. And Planning and Zoning Manager Kip Jones is here to provide additional information.
Mr. Jones, please proceed.
Kip Jones, Planning and Zoning Manager. So this is an amendment to the Land Development Code. It was staff initiated. 2 issues. Like the county administrator said, beekeeping and accessory dwelling units. Beekeeping, after doing some research, we found that the county's regulations were some of the most strict for beekeeping in the area. So we believe the amendments loosen up those restrictions, but also help protect adjacent property owners when somebody's keeping bees on smaller properties. So the previous The way the code is now, you had to have 3 acres to keep bees. This would allow anyone to keep bees as long as they met setback standards from their property lines. There's also some provisions about providing water for the bees and items like that. So what we tried to do was take what we thought were relevant sections of code from local jurisdictions to protect property owners, but to allow more property owners to keep bees if they wish. So that's the beekeeping. The accessory dwelling unit, that's kind of been a thorn in planning and zoning side for quite a while. An accessory dwelling unit is the one exception to allowing a second house on a property in unincorporated Clay County. So, and the way the code's written now is it's just not very clear. The way I feel the intent is it's designed to be a smaller version of a home where if you have a mother-in-law or aging parents, it allows them to live on the same property as you, but it doesn't give the visual appearance that there's a second house on the property because it does limit it to a certain amount of size. And I think the amendment just makes it more clear as to what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, because I don't think we want to get into where we have 2 full houses on properties, because then people think they can sell the houses separately without dividing the land. It creates all kinds of issues for planning and zoning staff. So kind of the same things with the accessory dwelling unit. Our building inspector did quite a bit of research on this. She believes it aligns us with the building code and local jurisdictions as well, and it just makes it much more clear. So these were heard at 2 Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. Unfortunately, we didn't have any public input. There was discussion amongst the Planning and Zoning Commission members, and they voted to approve them, to approve the amendments as you see them today. I would be happy to answer any questions commissioners may have. And then I invited our building inspector, Carla Umlin, to attend the meeting in case you had specific questions about the accessory dwelling units.
Thank you. On the accessory building issue, does this provide more clarity than anything else? It doesn't really have quite as many. It feels as though that it's just more of a clarification than an either increased or decreased regulation. Is that a fair statement?
I would agree, yes. I believe it makes it much more clear, but it also aligns with the 850 square feet, which was in there currently, but it just makes it easier to understand and provides additional details that will help folks as they read our regulations.
Now, is there and I probably should know this, but I'll ask anyway, is there any restriction as far as a property owner who has this mother-in-law's, say, quarters, which is, I guess, a term, is there any restriction as far as them using that as rental property?
There is not.
Okay. I don't know if that's a
And
good thing or bad thing, but I'm just asking where we're at.
So we have what's called a tourist home in our code, which would be like an Airbnb version. And off the top of my head, I don't think there's certain zoning districts that may not be allowed in, but it's allowed in most zoning districts.
My sense of it is, since it's something that seems to be, I wouldn't say a new subject, but one that had not really been part of the consideration, that tells me that may be a solution in search of a problem to pursue that much further. It sounds like it's not really an issue that's really come up, so therefore perhaps something we handle at some future date if that becomes an issue we want to take up.
I would agree. The Airbnb issues are more of a city issue at this point. Now, that may change as things change, but we could address it in the future if we needed to. But it hasn't been an issue for us at this point.
Very good. And obviously, it's a coincidence, but the unfortunate incident, I believe, in Kansas sort of leaps to mind. That also seems, we all hope, like rather a one-off, or at least a rare circumstance. The other has to do with the other part, of course, is beekeeping. Is this something that has been kind of I will refrain from making jokes about it. Is this something that has also come up as an issue in recent times?
It started with, this revision kind of started with a code complaint, and then staff started researching our code and why we have the code that we have. So in my 7 years, we've dealt with bees twice, and the most recent one made us look at it a little closer than I think we have ever. And that's when we discovered that we're probably a little more strict than what we should be.
Does this result in, do you think, an unnecessary reduction in that activity to where there would be people who might want to be involved in that, and these regulations are inhibiting that pursuit?
I believe our current code does, yes.
And the reason I bring that up is not just because of the opportunity for some opportunity and the recreational activity of it, but certainly most people, I think, are aware that the presence of bees is certainly very important to agriculture in general. And, you know, if we can increase our bee population, which the bee population nationally has been deteriorating, has been reducing rather dramatically, this isn't saving the world, but this seems like a positive step to me.
I would agree, and staff really doesn't want to be regulating property size for bees because we are by no means bee experts.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter?
No questions, just thanks to the staff who did the research and put this together.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this issue? Mr. Counselor, while this is not controversial, it is a change in ordinance. I'm a little bit inclined to put it on regular agenda for that purpose. Does that sound like it fits within that? I see Commissioner Carpenter rather nodding in a sense. So would you prefer regular?
Yeah, I think these are significant enough changes that regular makes sense to me.
That was kind of my sense of it too. So with that, 2022 Ordinance 9 will be on next week's regular agenda. That brings us to 2022 a series 100, 101, 102, 3, 104, 105, 106, 107. Please proceed.
Thank you. Resolutions 2022 100 through 107 is consideration of an agreement between Clay County and municipalities for prisoner housing services. And there are a number of individual cities that would have these agreements: Como, Excelsior Springs, Gladstone, Kearney, Liberty, North Kansas City, Pleasant Valley, and Smithville. And Captain Agadarian is here to provide additional information to the commission.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. And as usual, I come to you with a whole host of things, but fear not, this will be short. The resolutions before you today are simply updated agreements between the Clay County Detention Center and the municipalities within Clay County that we serve. Those municipalities do not have the ability to have a large detention facility. In most cases, they have maybe 1 or 2 holding cells. So we have crafted these agreements to facilitate inmates being taken into custody for those municipalities and held if they are not able to make bond or if they are to be sentenced based on county time, then they would transfer to the custody of Clay County. All right, so basically we've had these agreements in place for many, many years, but we noticed last year that it had been a little while since we addressed any updates, and we also have included language that increases our fees for the daily housing of inmates. Last year, there was an increase. This year, on January 1st, there's another increase. Next year, on January 1st, there will be a final increase. So, well, final as far as this period of time. So these are to be looked at annually, and this is the most recent iteration of them.
Okay. Yeah, actually, that was you hit the exact point that was crossing my mind, and that was the issue of the money involved, of the fees that they would be paying. So I appreciate you handling that. My sense of it is that the contracts are pretty consistent throughout. So one contract is going to say, in substance, the same as all the others.
Yes, that is correct. All 8 of these are essentially the same language, same fees, all of that. There is no difference in these contracts. If you remember, we did have an agreement with Gladstone Public Safety for the transfer of a van for use by the sheriff's office, but that is a separate document, so the fee structure remains the same, so that if we use that, or if they use that credit up this year, that's attached to the van transfer as opposed to the municipal housing agreement.
Right, so what you're saying is that the agreement is the same with Gladstone as the
Yes.
others. It's just the other transaction we had with them would allow them credits that would go against the fees that we would be.
Correct, but that language isn't present in these or these agreements, which is why I brought them all at once.
Right, yeah, I wouldn't think that would be necessary to have that language in Gladstone's contract myself, but it sounds like this is time for us to be updating that, and certainly the idea that we're able to work with them on their prisoner population is, I think, a very positive thing. Commissioner Carpenter.
Just any substantial or especially important changes beyond the fee updates?
You know, actually, there was one. Yes, there was one, and that was, if you remember last year, we presented a request to reappropriate the budget for some funding that had been made available for purposes of feminine sanitary products for the female inmates. And one of the things that we noticed was the old agreements contained a different fee structure for female inmates, and that we were charging more per day for female inmates than we were for male inmates. And so we changed that language, so now the fees are the same regardless of gender, because that funding source is made up with the other funds from the state. So that's the only change.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Yeah. No other questions, and obviously, cost of business goes up over time, and updating the fee schedule makes sense to me.
Yes, I notice our inmate population is on the increase. So.
All right. I'm kind of inclined to go with consent on that. Is that okay with Councilor Dudden? Any issues with that? Commissioner Carpenter?
I support that. Yep.
Very good. The items listed, 100 through 107, will be on the consent agenda. That brings us to 2022 Ordinance 8.
2022 Ordinance 8 is consideration of amending the current budget for addressing reappropriations for our 2021 open purchase orders. And our County Auditor, Victor Herbert, is here to present information.
Mr. Auditor, please proceed.
Yes, Victor Herbert, Clay County Auditor. So Ordinance 2022 Ordinance 8 is something we do every year. It's within our budget. It's in our budget ordinances, specifically 2022 Ordinance 110D, as well as corresponding Ordinance 2D. And essentially, the auditor closes all open 2021 purchase orders. This year's deadline was March 1st at 5 p.m. And we did that, and then we present to you an ordinance to reopen any existing open 2021 purchase orders that were specifically approved by the commission with that dollar amount by form of a resolution. So that's what is here before you for those continuing projects. We essentially have 12 purchase orders on this year's list. I'll note that the first two are the only non-ARPA purchase orders. They deal with dump trucks for highway, as well as part of the runway grant for airport is number 2. And then the rest, numbers 3 through 12, are all ARPA related. Number 3, I will make a comment that the total approved obligation was $655,015.05. After going through documentation with the health center based on that purchase order, it's actually going to be less at $535,000 and change. We roll over the entire amount, however, because that's what was budgeted at year end, so that we can utilize that in 2022. So just want to make a comment there. I'll also make a comment about number 12. This is a unique one. This one's already been paid. However, it came in less than what was encumbered at year end. It was $1,000 less. And so basically we're reappropriating that $1,000 so we can again use that in the current year. That was for the HVAC improvements at the Kearney Senior Center. So those are really some explanations on those purchase orders, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter.
No questions, just thanks.
No, thank you very much. I mean, this is sort of a, typical thing that we do, so it sounds like pretty much regular business, so I think it's pretty straightforward. Thinking that we should, since this involves expenditure of funds, put it on regular agenda?
Works for me, thanks.
Very well. 2022 Ordinance 8 will appear on regular agenda for the next meeting. 2022-95, Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-95 is also a request to make a transfer within a fund. This is associated with our Emergency Rental Assistant Program 1.0, and our county auditor is here to provide additional information.
Please proceed.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. So Resolution 2022-95, as Administrator said, deals with the 1.0 first program for Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Essentially, what this request is to transfer some budget from the administrative portion that can't exceed 10% of the award to the program assistance. The reason being, United Way, one of our case management agencies, actually approved some applications and spent some dollars out of their own means above and beyond what the county actually provided them. And so we can go over 90% for program assistance dollars. There's nothing in the guidance that says we can't do that. We just can't go over 10% in administrative. So working with United Way, they agreed to basically utilize some of their admin dollars that they didn't have need for, $7,600. And then we have some unobligated administrative dollars as well in ERAP 1.0 of $9,100 that combined will get us to $16,796.92 to just make United Way whole for that assistance they provided to tenants. So that is essentially what 2022-95 is.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter.
No questions, thanks.
Okay. And consent or regular?
Consent works for me.
Consent is fine. So 2022-95 will be on consent. Brings us to companion issues, 2022 Ordinance 10 and 2022-99. They're grouped together. Are we okay with combining two items, one an ordinance and one a resolution, or?
For discussion and introduction purposes, but
Okay.
they would be separate votes, I'm assuming. For
So do we want to take them
consideration.
up, do we want to consider them separately? Because I saw that bracket and I wasn't sure that that was quite how we wanted to go.
Right. So the bracket, so for explanation, 2022 Ordinance 10 is reappropriation and revising the existing budget. As Commission is aware, you authorize participation in the Emergency Rental Assistance Program 2.0. So this is setting up for that program. The companion resolution is memorandum of understanding with 4 agencies to help us in administering that particular program.
Okay.
And again, the county auditor is here to provide additional detail, and then we'll get consideration from our attorney about how best to move forward with those items.
That sounds reasonable. Please proceed.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. So 2022 Ordinance 10, as Minister said, is essentially to reappropriate the new ERAP 2.0 funding we recently received. This was the discussion we had about we were able, based on progress of reaching 75% expended of 2.0, to apply for additional funds, and they provided 30% more of the awards, so that gets us up to 70% total. So what this budget does is, again, it separates the administrative portion and the program assistance portion on the expenditure side, 85% to program assistance, and then 15% to the administrative portion. So that's essentially enables having the budget to spend for the next issue of the MOUs.
Do we want to go ahead and discuss 99, or do we want to pause on this and go ahead and determine whether we should consider them together? Mr. Counselor?
My only request would be that they end up either together on consent or together on regular. I wouldn't want them separated, where one could get not passed and one could get passed. I'd rather they be on the same agenda.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because like I say, I was a little twitchy about combining a resolution and an ordinance as a companion issue, but if you don't see that as a problem, then let's go ahead and talk about 99, and then as long as there's no objection, then we'll just treat them as companion issues as we have in the past issues. Please proceed.
Yes, so Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor, Resolution 2022-99 is the memorandums of understanding for the agencies to carry out the assistance for that 30% amount of ERAP 2.0. These are essentially the same formatted agreements that we've seen before for 1.0 and the first portion of 2.0. The participating agencies in this case, however, are three. Just like how we started 2.0, they are Kearney Enrichment Council, Metro Lutheran Ministry, and Northline Healthcare Access. And so they are each going to get an even amount of $244,842.95. And then for the administrative portion, that 15% bucket, those same three agencies will be due up to $34,566.06. Per the contract and understanding with Community Care Link, our technology provider, they're due 2% $17,282.03, and 1% we have as contingency. We were initially intending to have that with United Way. Again, they've opted out of any more administrative costs, so that 1% will be contingency.
Okay. That sounds like, I'm glad we are continuing with the project with that help for landlords and tenants in Clay County. So it sounds like a good thing. Commissioner Carpenter.
Yeah, no, I'm just grateful the program is continuing to be administered well. I think we can be proud of what we've done here in Clay County with these efforts, and look forward to moving this forward.
So is there any problem with putting these on consent, Mr. Counselor? Very well. So if that's okay with the...
I mean, I think my preference is to put them on regular, if that's all right, only because, these are specifically allocated federal dollars, but we are then spending pretty significant amounts of money with the partner organizations here. So
I think
if that's all right. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. I think in the light of that recommendation, we put 2022 Ordinance 10 and 2022-99 on regular agenda for our next meeting. 2022-109, please.
Yes, Resolution 2022-109 is consideration of the utilization of ARPA funding for a partnership program with Downtown Excelsior Partnership for Tourism. And again, our county auditor is here to introduce that. And we also have in the audience Lindsay Baxter from the Downtown Excelsior Partnership to address any questions the commission may have about the program.
Please proceed.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. So Resolution 2022-109 is, as the Minister said, an American Rescue Plan Act requests in the amount of $200,000 to the Downtown Excelsior Partnership. Just as some background on this, this was and is budgeted in the 2022 budget under our economic recovery expenditure line in that exact amount. And so I give credit a lot to staff and the administrator for pulling together the effort for the county then to pull this off, working with our tourism board and Downtown Excelsior Partnership. We had a discussion about this in January 19th, and so this is essentially that plan coming to fruition. There's a lot more detail I'll let Lindsay go through, but essentially the goal is to get Clay County back its status as a DMO or destination marketing organization and participate in marketing matching grant from the state of Missouri and economic development and tourism with the state. This is eligible under the final rule as far as the auditor's part in this process. And looking at page 4450 and assistance to the tourism industry, it's deemed under the guidance as an impacted industry because of the pandemic. And so that's why we put it into budget as a way to utilize those dollars for this effort. Other than that, process will be, again, reimbursement, and Lindsay will go more into greater depth with that, and we will work with the nonprofit and our tourism board to make those reimbursements occur for those eligible expenditures. So without further ado, I'll invite up Lindsay to go into more background about the program.
Did you have any questions of the auditor?
No questions, thanks.
Very well, please proceed.
Lindsay Baxter, Downtown Excelsior Partnership. I'm willing to answer any questions you might have had. I've had the opportunity to present all of you all with a program policy outline for how this would become beneficial to all of the Clay County tourism departments and/or agencies that could apply and take advantage.
I think I'm pretty happy with the way that we've put it together. Commissioner Carpenter?
Oh, no, and appreciate discussions we've had about it. Grateful to you for staying on top of this as an issue. I think it's important. Just clarification for the public, although working with Excelsior, to your point, any municipalities, tourism folks can apply for grant dollars under this program?
Correct. Any not-for-profit organization responsible for promoting tourism on or behalf of a tourism or destination industry, and then also any county, city, or government that has a tourism focus.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, and I think this is, as I think we discussed, this is a further step towards reestablishing ourselves as being more involved in tourism, whether through Missouri, but also more broadly speaking. So no, this is something that we've needed to get back into that rather went sideways in recent years. So I'm glad we're back on track, or at least we are certainly going in the correct direction for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Regular agenda?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, that would be 2022-09 would be on regular agenda for next time. That brings us to 2022-69, Administrator.
Yes, Resolution 2022-69 is consideration of issuing term and supply contracts with 4 separate vendors for supplying temporary and seasonal staffing for the organization. And HR Manager Kim Callahan is here to answer any questions that the Commission may have.
Please proceed.
Hi, good afternoon. Kim Callahan, Human Resources Manager. We're asking for approval for Resolution 2022-69, number 9021, which is awards the temporary staffing contracts to these 4 companies. We did receive 14 bids. We had an evaluation committee that went through all the bids and scored them, and these were the highest scoring companies. The county uses temporary services, mainly seasonal workers, through these companies. They have a pool of workers that we pull from. It actually saves the county from no longer having to provide workers' comp, unemployment, liability insurance. Additionally, Clay County employees, we don't have to spend time processing applications, interviewing, preparing paperwork, and like I said, they have a large pool to draw from.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Carpenter.
No questions, just thanks for all the work that I'm sure went into the bid process. Thanks.
Yeah, because this is an issue that comes up periodically about how we are able to supply our need for labor, and this is certainly a time when it's more challenging than it has been in recent years to be able to have the adequate amount of labor to do the duties we are tasked to perform. Regular agenda, or are you okay with consent? I mean, it's a contract, but.
Yeah, regular, I guess, is probably the safer bet. Thanks.
I think so too. 2022-69 would be on next week's regular agenda.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to 2022-96. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-96 is the annual settlement documentation that is provided by the county collector on an annual basis, and Collector Barbara O'Reilly is here to answer any questions that the Commission has.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Barbara O'Reilly, Clay County Collector. I'm presenting the annual settlement for your approval as of the end of February the 28th, 2022.
Okay.
Any questions?
Well, it's obviously an annual kind of an exercise.
Yes, sir.
Something we do every year, so it's not
Yes.
not new. All right. Is there anything that you would like to make comment on? Anything that is differs
No,
particularly
not-
from previous years?
It's approximately the same. Didn't see any big changes.
Very good. Commissioner Carpenter?
No questions.
All right. Regular agenda?
Thanks.
Please put 2022-96 on next week's regular agenda. Thank you very much. That brings us to 2022-76. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-76 is consideration for a capital project to basically replace our salt storage shed. And this is presented by the Highway Department to issue the contract to Greenfield Contractors. And Deputy County Administrator Carl Walters is here to answer any questions.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commission. Carl Walters, Deputy County Administrator. Salt storage shed, or let me step back, 2022-76 ordinance brought before you for the Commission under the budget line item of 301-820, 403 to turn around and replace our recent salt shed that we had built in-house years ago. It's not adequate, and two, it's falling apart. We had, and when I say in-house, we turned around and did our own concrete work, we did our own structure build and stuff, but now we've had to take I-beams and stuff to hold the sidewalls up and things, and now it's just coming apart. We had researched it last year to see about putting another structure up, and then we came to looking at a different type of structure, which is a fabric galvanized structure. And so we was looking around to see, and MoDOT uses a lot of it. And I looked out here on 435, you can see one of those structures that it's wrapped in. It's kind of like a Quonset hut type unit, so that the fabric has got like a 15-year extended warranty onto it to help out. And then plus, it's open to the elements on the front side of it. So we could actually have this in here with a door on it to keep the elements out of it, so that we could, you know, put more salt, have storage, because we aren't the only ones that use it for the county. We also have facilities using out of it, and we have the parks using out of it as well. So we could actually store more salt on hand.
And so is it going to be constructed on what's going to happen with the old structure, I guess?
The old structure we'll turn around and demolish ourselves. That's part of the agreement with Greenfield. We'll turn around and demolish that and haul that debris away. And then we have to set the platform for the structure that's coming in. So we'll have to make it a bit bigger. That structure we have now is probably about a 40 by 30. This is going to be a 52 by 60. So we have to turn around, bring dirt in, compact it, and then we'll have to lay the asphalt plan out for it so that they can turn around and drill the piers for it and set that structure in.
Okay. Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you for the information. Sounds like a good, necessary project. The decision to go with Greenfield as how was that decision arrived at?
We have a Sourcewell contract that we have through the county that we can use. So we had a couple of them that's on that, and we checked with both of them to see who had the better deal going. He actually offered a better warranty and more to the building than the other contractor did. So there was two that we checked out with to see who had the better thing going. And they had a better track record with everything that they was putting together with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's just it's a pretty sizable number at 169,000. So I just curious in terms of we're following all public bid requirements.
Yes, sir. Because originally when we turned around and looked into this, the original building that we was looking into was around 450,000, and I thought that was kind of high. So that's the reason why we researched, and like I said, MoDOT up here at Kearney carries them. MoDOT over here on I-29 carries it. They all have these fabric type buildings, and so to save on a little bit of money, I think we ought to go down this road.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, what is the age of the current structure we're using?
We probably built that in the 90s, early 90s, when we put that structure in, and then we had to add to it because we was only able to put maybe 1,000 ton, but we had to keep it, back in the opening. Now we added on to it, and we can hold about 1,800 ton, and still we're open to the elements and stuff, which we need a door, and that's not processed because our loaders, that's another thing, our dump trucks are bigger, our loaders are bigger, and we're just, actually, we've broken a couple of rafters for what process we're doing too.
So the increased size of the new building will
Yes,
limit
it'll-
those damages?
Yes, because then it's open span to everything so that we won't be tearing any rafters up or anything like that.
And is there a projected life expectancy for this new structure?
Well, the structure is dipping, galvanized dipped, so there should be, it should last us with the galvanized dip. Plus, we have the concrete piers that come up on it as well, and then they're sealed, we'll seal around it as we turn around and put the asphalt around the piers. And then the fabric is a 15-year warranty on a 20-pound load of snow, which we're back to that, you know, it's got that arch look to it.
Okay. And so certainly the maintenance, I don't know how much maintenance we've had to do in addition to any damage done to the structure that you just referred to, but certainly, I don't know if these really require very much in the way of maintenance. They're not supposed to be particularly pretty when you get right down to it. So.
Well, they're not, but I'll say this, looking at the structures that MoDOT has, and they've had that one up there, I know every bit of 15 years. And I know I did the research on the one that's got the Charlet Bull auction sale up there. He's had his every bit of 8 years. And the one sitting out there at 435, I know I've passed that many times in the past. I know it's been there every bit of 15, if not better. And I know it, especially since they have straight salt, and that's all they use is straight salt out of theirs. And I know it's better than 15 years old that they've had that up there at MoDOT.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? 2022-76 regular agenda, sound good? Very well. 2022-76 will be on the regular agenda for our next meeting. That brings us to 2022-97. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-97 is consideration of the utilization of ARPA funding for trail repairs and award the contract to McConnell and Associates. And again, Deputy County Administrator Carl Walters is here to discuss that project.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commission. Carl Walters, Deputy County Administrator. Brought forth to you is ARPA funds to use on the county's trails for upgrading on some of the cracks, the spider cracking, the asphalt coming apart. We had McConnell's and Sons, which is on a cooperative bid, come and do the research on it, and do an inspection on the Smoke and Davy Trail, the Bone Bender Trail, and Eagle Nest to see what it would cost to do each one of these. And they broke it down into each one of them. To do Eagle's View is $29,580, and to do Smoke and Davy was $215,000, and to do Bone Bender was $101,889, and that was to axle section repair some of the asphalt, to turn around anything a 1/4 inch or bigger, to turn around and crack seal and then seal over the trails, which is not near as bad, but it does have spider and cracking done to it.
Okay.
Which the amount, I apologize, the amount is $346,578 for those 3 trails.
And so obviously this is, I think the auditor has certified that these are in fact appropriate use of ARPA dollars.
Yes.
And I think it is pretty explicitly in there, so it's not really a close call. It's very well inside the allowed parameters for the spending of the money.
Correct, and the thing about it is keeping these trails in good shape is very important for the public. They're riding their bicycles and people running and stuff, you know, things. And when you get the weather that we just had over the last thing with the freezing thaws, it seems to pop up, so we need to take care of what we have and see if we can keep up with this.
Well, and the other part of it is if we let them deteriorate, then clearly the more extensive the work that needs to be done, the more expensive it will be. So this is rather spending the money now. And I think I saw something in here where one of the trails, it didn't require the entire trail to be worked on because part of it had been recently taken care of, recently
Yeah, some of it
maintained.
was done last year on the bone bender part of it, and so we did a little bit because we had that already budgeted in there, so we did some correct projects on that to make that a little bit better, but we want to try to finish some of this stuff up.
And so we're looking at roughly 16 or maybe just a little under 3/4 of a mile.
Mhm.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Thank you. I'm a big fan of trails, and if we can utilize ARPA dollars as eligible to help maintain them, I think that's fantastic. So similar question to last time, just in terms of how did we settle on McConnell and Associates, and did we seek out alternative competitive bids? And then in addition to that, I'm curious as to the sort of evaluation process in terms of choosing which parts of the trails are kind of the highest need and that are included here? Because I assume there's a lot of
There is. And
trails that aren't.
We have a manager that walks with it. He's the trails manager that walks through with the contractor. He'll point out things that need to be done and what's important that has to be taken care of and where he sees the need of that. And then the contractor, he'll write it down. He'll give you an estimate. McConnell's came from the TIPS program, which is an interlocal purchasing system. That's a cooperative that we can feed off of, and usually that's what we, look for.
I got you. And obviously, this is just another sizable number at 350,000. Without checking other folks who do this work, is there a way to have a high level of confidence that this is the most cost-effective way to do it?
Unless I have another contractor come out and give you another rating, a price, make sure that they're comparable to what McConnell's does, and the other person that we had do last year is no longer on a cooperative bid that we could find that had done previous work for the county. We could research that if that's what you would like to do.
Well, I guess I don't know that it's absolutely necessary. I'm just trying to, get the best understanding as to what the best practice are here when we're talking about these big six-figure numbers in terms of.
I don't know the numbers to everything that asphalt does, but I know when I'm talking to an asphalt person, I know I've been at this for 30 years, that I'm not going to have somebody try to pull the wool over my eyes. I'm not saying that that can't happen. I'm not the perfect person. But I know when we're wanting something that's done right, I don't want to walk away from something that's done wrong.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just had a follow-up. What is the, how long do we, what is the life expectancy of this particular maintenance before we will need a similar maintenance effort done? I realize that can depend on weather, it can depend upon the usage of the trails and a lot of other things, but do we have an idea of what kind of duration we will get from this effort?
Well, we'll get a year warranty on any of their workmanship that they've done, so that's a good part about it. But when you're talking about roads and trails, it's kind of hard to say, because even if even the first year that you turn around and put asphalt in, you're looking at a couple of years before you start seeing a little bit of cracking, because the ground can, expand and contract, and you start getting your cracking and stuff. And then we used to be able to turn around and have those people come in and seal it, back to back, but then it kind of went to the wayside. So now here we are, turning around and trying to do major repairs to this stuff because it fell to the wayside. So, you got to go with the weather around here, because you just never know, from torrential downpour of rain to what we just had last season of the winter. When you get a hard freeze and you turn around and get that weather that comes right back up to 60 degrees and you get that thaw, that freezing thaw, when that water gets trapped underneath there, something's got to give. So that's what takes place.
No, I understand that. That's why I said there are a lot of things
It's
that are
tough.
certainly beyond our control and that are not easily predicted. I guess the other thing that I would want, and I don't expect a specific answer, but I just want to kind of raise the issue of, as we look at our trail system, can you give us a feel for, and we can maybe go deeper into this as we go through the year, but where are we at as far as our maintenance? Are we generally in good shape? And what I'm getting at is, it's obviously an expensive operation, but necessary. So I'm trying to get a handle on what we could, as a commission, could be looking at as far as reasonable expectations going forward to what kind of investment we will need to be making going forward. Are we kind of behind the curve and really trying to catch up? Are we in pretty decent shape? My guess would be we are not ahead of the curve.
Well, I can ask Mike, he's our director. Are we pretty much kind of getting ourselves back where we need to be?
Sure.
Because
Could you go ahead and maybe that might be easier, that way it'll be,
Because you're looking at 16 miles sitting here right now, and we have 30, as I told you before, we have 39 miles right now of trails that we have to maintain and keep care of, and then we've been behind for quite a while, which Mike Driscoll here, director, will tell you the same thing. We've been behind for so while, because everybody's turned around and just laid it to the wayside, thinking that, you know, it's gonna fix itself, but what can't fix itself? We have to turn around, we have to put money in the budget every year to turn around and do some sort of work to that trail, of one of those trails up there, just to keep up.
Mike Driscoll, Parks Director. We have accomplished quite a bit in the last 2 previous years as far as getting started, but we are, I would say, several years behind as far as just regular asphalt maintenance for the trail. And this request, if approved, would basically catch us up to a good spot to where the newer trails on the west side of the lake, Little Platte North and South, you know, we're in pretty good shape, and with a much smaller amount probably per year, you know, funded through the budget, we could keep up with our maintenance and be on track to keep it all in good shape.
and that was kind of where I was going with this, was because, you know, obviously the ARPA money is a one-time shot in the arm of cash, and I guess what's kind of behind that is this one-time money, while it is an ongoing obligation to maintain our trails, this would enable us to put us in a spot to where we were not quite so far behind on the curve. And I guess what's underlying my question, and like I say, I think this is for future discussions, is how much further, this puts us ahead, but this jump up on our maintenance, what are we looking at as far as where we would be going forward? Like I said, I didn't want to necessarily drill down too deep in that at this moment, but I want to raise the issue so that we can be looking at this in the future, and what is it going to take for us to get to where we are at a good point on the maintenance of these trails. I would like, and I think Commissioner Carpenter, as he said, he is a fan of trails. It would be good to expand our trail system, but we have to be sure that we can maintain what we got before we engage in expansion. So I think a precursor to expanding our trail system would be to make sure that we are able to maintain those that we do have. So I would like to, at some point in the future, just to kind of get a handle on that so that we can make some intelligent decisions going forward. Is that?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think forward-looking projections on costs around maintenance of the current system and what it would cost to do any kind of expansion and sort of longer-term costs makes sense to do those kinds of research and projections. So I think you raise a good point.
And I agree. We have 3 employees right now that maintain what trails we have, and then we have our summer help. I think in the future, we probably need to look at seeing about adding to our employees to turn around and keep up, because, you know, 39 miles is a lot. And you got tree cutting that's going on because we just had those storms and stuff that we had to remove some of the trees, and then a little bit of crack sealing, but we did have our own crack sealing machine at one time, but they got rid of that because of the maintenance issues and stuff like that. It's just, it's maintenance.
Okay.
Truly is.
Was there anything else, Commissioner Carpenter, you'd like to? Yes, Administrator.
So coming forward, staff is looking at additional projects, and one of our goals is to put together a 5-year capital improvement plan for all our assets and do asset management. There are best practices out there about how often you should touch a trail and to what degree. And so we'll be taking a look at those best practices and applying that to our trail system and try to give some forecasting and some planning about what is the appropriate amount of money each year that we should be investing in just routine maintenance. And then we agree, there's certainly an opportunity to expand the trail system. What would that cost? But again, you know, how sustainable is that so that you can maintain it going forward. So those things are in the works as we start developing that 5-year capital improvement plan and beyond.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, because that is something I think that, you know, we're certainly happy to hear that that's something that you've already anticipated and you're already making progress on. Thank you. Is there any more discussion on 2022-97? 2022-97 for regular agenda. That brings us to 2022-110. Please
Yes,
proceed.
Resolution 2022-110 is a proposed agreement between Clay County and Clay 135 LLC for road improvements. So this is part of the Carriage Hills Estate development, and the developer is required, per our platting and process, is to do road improvements. And there are times that we enter into agreements with the developer. Well, the developer requests that the county actually do those improvements, and the developer then pays for those costs. So that's in essence what this agreement is. And Deputy County Administrator Carl Walters can go into more detail, and I'm sure Mr. Jones from Planning and Zoning can also.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commission. Carl Walters, Deputy County Administrator. This, as the Administrator said, this is get into an agreement with Cardinal Hill Estates. As you know, through the numbers of things that they had to do, they wanted to have the county get into an agreement, which we've done this in the past, cooperative agreements with cities and folks around for our roads and basically their roads as well, to see what it would cost for us to actually put it in place, do our roads and things. So Croco Road is about 3,300 feet of frontage where Cardinal Hills is going to be, and then what we'll do is go in there, widen it to 22 feet. It's sitting right at about 18 feet, and then we'll re-ditch it, replace a couple of tubes, go through there, build the road, prime it, seal it, and then seal it again because that's called a double chip and seal. Then on 112th Street, what we'll do is to the west of that intersection, we'll cut down that hillside a little bit, build that road so we can get line of sight from that curve, because it's kind of an S-curve coming around there, to drop that down so we could get a little bit of line of sight for the people that are going to live there, make it safer, and then chip seal that road as well.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
No questions, thanks.
Okay. 2022-110 consents, is that okay with everybody?
Well, I'm thinking probably regular, if that's all right.
No, that's fine.
Yep. Thanks.
That brings us to 2022-98.
Yes, Resolution 2022-98 is consideration of the utilization of ARPA funding for improvements for campsites at both Camp Branch and Crows Creek. And Parks Director Mike Driscoll is here to provide information for the Commission.
Please proceed.
Mike Driscoll, Clay County Parks Director. This request is basically a request for the purchase of gravel to continue our improvements and renovation of campsites within both campgrounds there at Smithville Lake. We've seen a much increased usage of basically all of our sites the last 2 or 3 years, and many of these sites need to be renovated, expanded, to provide space for much larger RVs and campers that we're seeing now. This request is mainly for gravel. We do the work in-house as far as leveling, expanding, and then compacting and putting the gravel on and compacting it. This amount would basically finish all campsites that we have pegged for renovation at this time. There's some sites that will remain as they are, basically for just tent camping and small, just truck or camper pull-ins. But these sites that we've picked for renovation all have electricity now and are capable of, we want to make them capable of handling, the larger RVs and stuff that we're getting nowadays.
Okay. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, so 2022-98 regular agenda.
Sounds good.
And that brings us to our final issue, 2022-77. Administrator?
Yes, Resolution 2022-77 is consideration of approval of event license for the Historical Downtown Liberty Incorporated. They are proposing 3 events that have 7 different dates, and Deputy County Administrator Donna Kuntz is here to provide information for the commission.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Donna Kuntz, Deputy County Administrator, and I am the last one on this list, so if there's any good news, let me tell you that right now. So this is, we continue our partnership with the City of Liberty and our historic Downtown Liberty, Inc. group. This would give permission for, again, handling their cruise nights, their farmers markets, and they also plan on participating with us on the unveiling of the time capsule, so it also includes a bicentennial celebration. And I have the dates of any of these events if you'd like those specific dates. But this would take care of their annual cruise night and farmers market and then a special event.
Okay, so we kind of got a trifecta going here.
Yeah, that's right.
Very good. Questions, comments?
No questions, thanks.
All right, any other comments? Seeing none. Consent?
Works for me.
Very well, 2022-77 would go on our consent calendar. That brings us to the conclusion of to this evening's, or this afternoon's, almost this evening's regular agenda. Commissioner Carpenter, would you like to take a shot at this?
Yes, I will take a shot. I'm not sure I move that the following items be placed on next Wednesday, 6 p.m.'s consent agenda. 22, 81, and 82, 83, 84, and 85, 89, and 90, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107, 95, and 77. That's what I have with each remaining item going on next Wednesday's regular agenda.
And that's certainly consistent with what I have, all other items being on the regular agenda. Very well, motion has been made to place the items listed on the consent agenda, all remaining items be on the regular agenda. Discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes. That brings us back to two of our discussion items, which were moved to the bottom of the agenda. Do we want to start with the ARPA funding, or would you prefer to start with the road district settlements?
Well, so in preference, we'd go in order with the ARPA funding, and I'm hoping technology, Kip, do we need to do anything to make it pop on the screen?
You look like you're ready to hit the road.
So we'll take just a second little break here for technology. But we wanted to take a few minutes to present to the commissioners during the work session, kind of to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act. And certainly we've seen a few of those items come before the commission tonight. And, you know, we had intended that this would have actually been a presentation before those items were discussed, but we'll make it happen. So we wanted to give a sort of a brief overview of the plan. And so just briefly, because I know it's certainly been a long agenda, we want to kind of talk about just a really brief overview, a high level of the American Rescue Plan Act. Where are we today? And then what are some next steps and how do we continue to move forward is the plan for today's presentation. So when we look at the overview, and again, tonight, for those that are listening or in the audience, who heard us refer to it as ARPA. And so we are a society of acronyms. And so the American Rescue Plan Act was certainly passed by the federal government. And as part of that, and there are a number of different avenues of funding that is available under that act. And one in particular that applies to the county is the state and local fiscal recovery funds. So all that being said, we're trying to combine it and simplify it, so we will continue to refer to it as the ARPA projects or ARPA funding, so just for those that are listening in. So just briefly about ARPA. The Treasury, as the auditor does his due diligence and is on top of the regulations that have come out from Treasury. We had interim regulations and we now have final regulations, but we certainly have guidelines and criteria of how those funds can be utilized. And so really it breaks down into about 6 different categories. The first one that is up here on the chart is public health, and certainly I give some examples of what that means and different types of expenditures that fall under that category. In no means is this the entire list that can fall under public health categories. There's also the economy, which the intent is to help those industries that were severely impacted by the shutdown. And so how are ways in which we can help those businesses? And certainly one that is called out, and you talked about it earlier this evening with the project, is tourism. And then there is the category of disproportionately impacted community. And so there are avenues in which in helping that community, whether it's educational or housing or utilities or childcare. And certainly the county has been very aggressive in going after revenue, such as the emergency rental assistance program, where now we're just, again, tonight, wrapping up 1.0 and allocating those funds, and then preparing to have 2.0 funds available and partnering with the agencies to get those funds out into the community and help those individuals that were impacted by COVID and need assistance. And then certainly a category is premium pay for employees that were fighting COVID. And then infrastructure is a category. And so, but it's very restrictive with regard to infrastructure. So it can be a water project, a stormwater project, it can be wastewater and broadband. So unfortunately, everything is included except roads, which is one of our major infrastructures, but we've got some proposals for you to consider. And then one of the categories is lost revenue for jurisdictions. And so the county is a benefit of that. And so there is an allocation out of our ARPA funds that can be utilized for lost revenue. So what are we talking about from money? So the total allocation for the county is $48.5 million. And the program is divided into getting 2 tranches. Half of it we received in 2021, and half of it we expect to receive in the next couple of months. So with that being said, the question then we kind of have and want to talk about is, so where are we today with the first tranche for the 2021 money? How has that been utilized and what's the status of that? So this, oops, I have to keep up with talking. So this chart has lots of numbers on it, and the commission, there's a copy of the presentation at the dais for you. But we wanted kind of to give a view of where are we with the first round of funds. Now, when we first received the money, the strategy at that point in time was to take the funds and divide it equally in thirds between 3 categories that are allowed for expenditures: public health, infrastructure, and economy. But at the time that we did that, we knew that we needed to be flexible. We weren't sure how the program was going to work, so it was a learning curve for us. And throughout, since the inception of the program, we have come back to you repeatedly over time and had you reallocate funds from one category to another. So on this chart at the top, you'll see that the current budget for the first tranche in public health is basically the $16.3 million. Infrastructure, the budget is 3.3, economy is 3.6, and then we have a category of the lost revenue, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So you can see currently that is how our $24 million is allocated in the different categories. Now, throughout the time, we have come to you and you have authorized projects. So we consider those funds encumbered. They are now obligated and they are authorized. So under public health to date, there has been $6.5 million encumbered. In infrastructure, there's been 2.6. In economy, there's 61,000. And then lost revenue, we have expenditures that are authorized about a little less than $1 million. And so those are programs that have come and been authorized but didn't fit in any of the other categories, and so lost revenue is being utilized to cover those costs. So to date, there's been $10.1 million authorized by the commission of the first tranche of funds. Now, when we're looking at obligations, one of the things that occurred during the budget process for the county for 2022 was to utilize and identify some of our projects that were eligible for ARPA funding. And so it was a bit of a budget strategy for 2022 and certainly a way to utilize these one-time dollars for county projects that were being proposed and considered in 2022. So the list of those projects are in the lower part of this chart in the box. Some of those projects have already come to the commission and have been authorized, and so they're up above in the encumbered number. So we have a number of projects that we have not come to you. However, you heard about a few of them this evening before this presentation. One of the things that as staff we looked at is we looked at our projects and analyzed which projects did we need to continue moving forward and come to you in this first tranche, and which projects with timing could we delay and come to you when we receive the second tranche in the next couple of months. And part of the reasoning behind that, you'll hear in a little bit later, is we have a number of requests that have come in from agencies. So we're trying to be as efficient and as effective as we can with our partners, and so staff said and identified, well, we believe these projects we need to move forward with, and they're sort of in the blue. And the other projects, we will come forward to the commission when we receive the second tranche of money. So when we pop back up and look at obligations of this first tranche of funds, we're talking about $1.2 million that will be coming forward in county projects. Again, a couple of them you heard about tonight, but $600,000 of that would be in infrastructure and $600,000 of that would be in economy. So that all being said, we basically have unallocated at this point in time a little over $12 million in our first tranche of funds. So just again for information, for the commission and for those watching, what are the projects that have been encumbered to date and how do they fall within the categories? And so you see here is a list of all the projects that the commission has approved and in which categories that they fall in, totaling our $10.1 million. This includes the last project that the commission approved just at your last business session for the Oak Brook subdivision stormwater project. Now this information is out on our website under our transparency portal and is kept up to date by the auditor's office. So that's the projects and the category in which the funding has been allocated to. The other thing I think interesting is who are the recipients of the funds? And so basically, again, taking a look at those projects that have been authorized, you see that our Sheriff's Department has received a little over $5 million of those allocations to assist with their costs associated with COVID. The Prosecutor's Office has received funding. The Clay County Health Department has. Our county departments have received about 1.2 in projects. And our outside agencies that we partnered with not-for-profits and municipalities is right now about $2.8 million. So that's sort of the picture on what we've spent to date. So let's talk about the unencumbered, the funds that are available in this tranche, basically the $12.8 million. So once again, looking at the applications that we have received, primarily from our healthcare providers, our hospitals and municipalities, and our not-for-profit of Life Unlimited and our health department. So looking at those applications, we're going to be recommending to the commission to once again do some reallocation of the funds of that $12 million. So we're recommending that the public health of fund balance that would be available for projects would be 7.4. So we'd be dropping it from the 9 and moving those funds over to infrastructure. We'd also be taking the balance that's currently in economy and moving that over to infrastructure. So we would in essence have available for those requests we have in the queue that we're working on, 7.4 for health and 5.4 for infrastructure. In essence, that would basically exhaust all of our funding for the first tranche of money that we've received. If the commission concurs with this allocation, you can see in the blue box that from a category perspective, 58% of our revenue that we receive from the ARPA funds will be on public health category, and 36% would be in infrastructure, a small amount would be in economy, and a small amount is utilized in lost revenue. Now, one of the things that we are looking at as we have these requests in-house is how do we basically allocate funds. There is a need across the county for agencies, not-for-profits, healthcare providers, and so we're trying to develop a fair and equitable way to look at these projects because I can tell you we don't have enough money right now, all 48 million, to fund all the requests that we've received. And so the question is, how do we allocate those funds in a fair and reasonable manner? So we put together for the commission to kind of consider is some guiding principles to use as we evaluate these proposals. The first and foremost, and I'm talking about infrastructure on this slide, first and foremost, all of them have to meet ARPA criteria, right? That's the first criteria that has to happen. The other things in consideration as we look at infrastructure projects are, does it address a health safety issue? Is it a critical need of the community? Does it lead to economic opportunities? Is it a county or regional impact? Does it address a compliance issue from a regulatory agency either now or a future regulatory change? Are they leveraging local dollars or are they looking for other funding? How ready is the applicant to proceed with that project? And is there a measurable return on investment? So those are some guiding principles in that we would recommend being able to be utilized as we look at these projects and kind of determine how do we allocate fairly between all the applications that we receive. We also would recommend something very similar approach for those that are in public health. So again, ARPA criteria would need to be met. Then we'd look at, with regard to the proposed project or reimbursement for their expenditures, is how does it address mitigation and preventive services for COVID-19? COVID patients, how many were treated? We know in talking to our healthcare providers, you know, that they used a lot of reserves to cover the costs of patients, and so how does that factor in with their request? The capital outlay that they're doing for their facility, is this a one-time expenditure? Is it recurring expenditure? And if so, is that sustainable by the organization? Is there an impact to the county and the community? And does it serve the disproportionately impacted or the vulnerable population of Clay County? Are they leveraging other funding? Are they ready to proceed with the project? And is there a measurable return on investment? So those are what we would recommend using as guiding principles as we put together a rubric and sort of basically rate the projects and try and identify that to how to allocate funding. What that does do is set us up for a process, and when we're talking about the second tranche. So what this chart represents is the second tranche of money that we expect to receive in the next several months. And again, it's going to be $24 million. The first thing that we believe needs to be allocated is the remaining balance of the lost revenue. According to Treasury, the county is entitled to capture $10 million in lost revenue. We've captured little less than $1 million in the first tranche. So the second tranche, we would recommend identifying right off the bat that balance of lost revenue for the county to utilize. We then also have those projects of the county that staff has agreed to say that we can delay in requesting, that were the 2022 projects, and that totals about $3.1 million. So we take into those consideration, looking at the second tranche, then we're looking about $12 million that's unallocated and would not be distributed into a particular category at this point in time. Now, we're daily, and Victor can attest to this, daily we're getting, inquiries now or applications, especially from our not-for-profits. And currently right now, not only are we working on the hospital and the municipalities that we've received that will exhaust all of tranche 1, to date we've received 7 additional not-for-profit applications for consideration. So we have a proposal as staff for next steps and how to move forward. For the 2021 funding, we would recommend reallocating, as I mentioned earlier, and moving funds around to address the public health and the infrastructure requests, and that would in essence exhaust those funds. We would then bring forward to the commission that recommendation for funding for those projects requested by the hospitals, the municipalities, and the health department and Life Unlimited. We also then recommend possibly putting on a moratorium for applications because we've now exhausted our first round of funding, and give us time to then come to the commission, first of all, to present county projects. You know, I hate to say it, we've not been at the table. While we were during the budget process, we've not really had a chance to sit down and present to the commissioners opportunities for county issues and county problems and projects and utilizing this one-time money. We'd like to have that opportunity to sit down and talk to the commissioners about that, have you prioritize those projects and identify that, yes, ARPA funding should be used, or you wouldn't prefer not to use ARPA money. Once we have that number, then we can go back to that 12 million that I just mentioned on the prior slide, and we will have identified how much funding is now available. What we would also propose then is to basically have a more structured process to receive applications for consideration. So in essence, we would do a call for projects for our not-for-profits and for any of the agencies that would want to submit applications. So we would be looking at those projects all at once, and we would be rating them and using the guiding principles with the rubrics to identify those projects and come to you with a recommendation of how to allocate funding on those projects that we've requested. So this is our proposal for next steps and how to move forward. And so we would certainly would like direction from the commission if this is something that you would like for us to implement.
No, I think it's a very good presentation, and it brings together an awful lot. It's easy to be overwhelmed when we start down this path. It's a lot of money and there's a lot of needs. So putting those, reconciling those two interests is difficult, and without some kind of structure, you're kind of almost reinventing it every day. So I appreciate the hard work that you and staff have done to put together the framework where we can actually much more efficiently, much more fairly assess what we need to do with these this asset that we've been given. So no, I think that I like where you're going with this. I'm anxious to see it go forward. So no, I'm pleased with what you presented to us, and like I say, I was just very impressed with the comprehensive nature of your presentation. Commissioner Carpenter? I'm sorry.
He's choked up about the presentation.
Anybody know the
No, I agree with Commissioner Nolte, excuse me. And I've appreciated our discussions and as well on this issue. And, you know, obviously, yes, this is a big one-time opportunity. I'm proud of the work we've done to date, and it makes sense to have it be organized going forward in terms of how we deal with the second tranche. And to your point, lots of requests, which means that some people either have to be told no, and or the amount requested is too high, and we can do a lesser amount. And that's been an interesting project to date, and I assume is going to only be more interesting going forward as people have heard about the ability to apply, and therefore that has increased.
It's pretty much the standard response that when I'm talking to applicants is, one of the questions is, can you move forward with this if you do not get full funding? Because the likelihood of getting full funding is probably not realistic based on the magnitude of the need across the county and the agencies. And again, all very worthwhile and all very impacted, you know, by COVID and have great projects and serving the citizens. And so the question is, you know, how do we best use this one-time money? And so we're trying to make sure that putting a structure in place, especially for the second tranche of funds, that you're looking at all those requests at one time and being able to prioritize those. Because the last thing we would want to do is have a very worthwhile project come to us at the very end, and then unfortunately we had allocated all the funds and we have none left. So that's why structuring that second process and looking at and doing a call for projects all at once will then have you the opportunity to really look at all the needs and how to best allocate those funds.
Absolutely makes sense. And one other question, in the additional 9 million in the lost revenue category, in terms of the guidelines from Treasury, are we required to spend that money quickly, or is there a depositing and holding on that can happen?
Well, and Victor may correct me, but the last time that when I delved into the regulations by Treasury, you could not add it to fund balance. So it wasn't something that we could say, which is sort of doesn't make sense because it's called lost revenue. And if you had lost revenue, you used reserves and you ought to be able to put it back. But unless they changed the guidelines, it was pretty much, there's a lot more flexibility in the lost revenue category, so we could use those funds on road projects and basically other general operations of county government. But I do not believe we can just set it aside and build up our reserves. Now, and you certainly can't use it to pay off debt. So there are certain restrictions with the lost revenue.
Yeah, when I recall when the initial regulations came out, that we couldn't put it into reserves, which, and that hasn't changed. Okay.
Yeah. So,
but would we have to spend it all in the
in
same fiscal
2022?
year, or it
No.
could be spread
No.
out?
So when staff meets with you, we have lists going and we're working on projects, not only ARPA projects, but if they don't fit in ARPA, potentially could they be lost revenue? You don't have to spend it all at once, and we don't have to spend it in 22, so there are time restrictions, so I believe it has to be spent by 2024, unless it's a construction contract, and so then construction project, so then it has to be under contract by 2024, but the project doesn't have to be completed till 2026. So there's some latitude there. So yes, do I anticipate that county's going to be able to come to you with our long list of lost revenue projects up to that 9 million, and you're going to say thumbs up? Probably not. But
Well, and I think that's a good thing, though. I'm glad we have the time flexibility
we
to
do.
spend it over time. And even if we can't put the money directly into reserves, my hope would be, obviously money is always fungible, and so my hope would be that it could free up some additional latitude for the commission to make that decision through the budget process. That is I think a good idea and a thing we ought to be doing. So.
Well, and, just looking at, the economic indicators surrounding us right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of our budget revenue comes from sales tax. Is there a huge recession? So there are some avenues, while we can't utilize that for reserves, it may be where it is actually used to help with current budgeted operational items because our revenues might not be where they think we budgeted for them to be in 22 or 23, just depending on what's happening with economic conditions. So we will look big picture also.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you again. And I want to say that this is quite a contrast from our handling of the CARES Act money earlier in this whole issue. To be fair, the CARES Act money was early on, and so it was very difficult for anybody to have a real handle on it. Obviously, we've all learned a lot since that time, but this is a much, better plan, a much better way of putting these things into some frame of reference. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that economic uncertainty is out there, and that the possibility that revenue replacement might be necessary in the immediate future is something that we should be bearing in mind as we are allocating these funds. And so I appreciate the fact that you're taking in a broad spectrum of what the concerns and the considerations we have as far as expending this money goes. My personal goal would be we don't return a single nickel to the federal government, that we do find a way, and I don't think it's going to be that difficult, to make sure that we have good uses for this money. And I was confident before that the staff was going to be doing a good job on this. This increases my confidence level in staff even further than it was before. So certainly appreciate the presentation.
Staff has done a great job putting together projects, and so just to rest assured for the commissioners, we could spend all $48 million. We have a pent-up need, and so we'll have a good list for the commission to look at and analyze and determine your priorities on.
Well, thank you, and thank you to staff. Is there any further discussion to be had on the ARPA funding update? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the second discussion item, which is road district settlements, and I believe that is the auditor's issue. Thank you.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. I realize I'm the last thing before home, so I'll make this very brief. Before you is an audit. It's a review under government auditing standards, review type of audit on the road district settlements from 2012. Big picture, the reason this came to my attention and why I started this audit was through the budget process. Just looking at both 2021 and 2022, the challenges we had in budgeting the Fund 220 for road and bridges and highway. It's just an ongoing issue, and so I thought it was something to look a little more deeper into, to see about potential options and just bring it to the commission as well as the public's attention, really. And in addition, I think it was good to look at that not only from the budget standpoint, but also looking at it from just the fact that the county now is in a better place to cooperate, communicate with our municipalities. So it's a better place to have that sort of review. So real briefly, this is online on the website as well, under my page where all my audits are housed. But essentially the second page gives you the table of contents. I won't go very much into depth. I've transmitted this report to you. You've read it, but I will just pull out a few highlights for you. But essentially, introduction and scope. Just a little bit of background here in introduction. So 2012, long story short, is 2008, the commission made a voluntary reduction in the road and bridge levy from 24 cents to 8 cents. The road and bridge levy is unique in that the county sets it, but municipalities actually receive some of that funding as long as separate entities, which are called incorporated special road districts. And so as a result, the municipalities at that time, rightfully so, were seeking some replacement for that reduction in their revenues, affected their planning. And so agreements were made at the time in 2012 to essentially come up with a provision to prevent this from happening again. And so essentially what they came up with at the time in 2012, the previous commission, was that effectively they would set road districts and cities would get 14 cents per $100 assessed valuation, regardless of what the county levy is. So currently, we are under 7 cents. And so basically what the county does is takes the revenue that's collected under our levy rate and true it up before an algebra calculation, and we pay out higher than what we brought in for that respective jurisdiction through other means. And those other means are essentially our own road and bridge levy revenue as well as sales tax. The settlements set up that for until 2027, we would pay the road districts and municipalities $1 million proportionally based on assessed valuation, less the TIF amount of 10%. So really it's $900,000. And then in 2027, that goes to $1.5 million, 1.35 after TIF. It is interesting, at the time the county was a non-charter county, and so some of these statutes don't necessarily speak to the county as a charter county, but nevertheless the Constitution does state that we're going to grandfather all of our agreements and keep them whole. So this audit, just to clarify, does not in any way question those, but it is again an opportunity to consider these things. So with that, again, it's a review. I didn't pick an auditee for responses under auditing standards because there are actually 15 entities, so I wasn't going to seek responses from 15 entities. On the second page of the background and audit plan, those entities are our major municipalities, 7 of them, along with the city of Kansas City. The city of Smithville does not have a road district. They never were able to form one. So the city of Kansas City is interesting. They can't form a road district either because the statute says they have over 100,000 in population, so therefore they can't do it. And also they spread over numerous counties. So those were the parties that were part of the settlement. And another thing to keep in mind about background is how these taxes are both assessed and then collected. So essentially, the statute says that when you have a parcel that's within overlapping jurisdictions, basically the rules of the road are if there is a city, a county and a city overlap, 25% off the top goes to the city. Again, this was a non-charter county, but again, we've made these settlements as part of that. And then after that subtraction, 4/5 or 80% is due to the incorporated road district. The city and the road district don't always perfectly align. They can be slightly different, just to clarify. And then the remainder, what's left, the 20% goes to the county. So that's how that is essentially settled and collected. So essentially, that's just some background information there. And then I really only have three main quick points for observation. When you do a review, I can only reach a conclusion based on sufficient and adequate evidence, and so that's what I've done. The first one is just the financial impact. I think that's the main observation I want to make to the commission and the public. And when you look at the main chart, I'll just speak to essentially the chart. We've gone from, if you go back to 2015, 8 cents to now we're at 0.697, under 7 cents. So we're less than half of that 14% true up that we have to perform. And basically we bring in more from property tax at 3.7 million from the most recent full year compared to our cities and road districts are only 2.6 million. But when you add in 900,000, really the county is only netting at the end of the day about $200,000. So for our road and bridge levy, the county only gets $200,000 to fund its entire, highway department when you consider all sources. So essentially, in my mind, it's a wash. There basically is no levy at this point. So certainly that can be a commission prerogative. If the commission wants to do that, give those funds to those jurisdictions, then so be it. And to be fair, there are other funding sources for our highway department. We have a Fund 301, a use tax fund, that's split, it's close to $2 million, but we're at a place with highway where essentially in Fund 220, the only expenses it can support are payroll. Anything that's non-personnel, so contractual commodities, we're really having to shift all to 301. So Fund 220 really can't sustain anything. So long-term, on the path we're at, especially in 2027, when we get to 1.5 million in sales tax, there's going to be a situation where general fund would have to supplement highway, kind of like we do in other instances. So that's the reason I wanted to really, bring this to you and highlight this trend from a financial perspective. On my mind, is a little bit disturbing. Now, again, I don't make a recommendation. I give a conclusion. If I were to make a recommendation to you, the easiest thing you could do is essentially reduce every year. You would apply Hancock Amendment just like you would to what we have to do. So every time we have to do a Hancock Amendment rollback because of increased property values, the same would apply to 14 cents. So if we go down a cent, the true-up would go down a cent. Now, of course, that could be a controversial issue. I understand that. Or maybe look at the sales tax portion. But that's just something I've seen. So in statute that our special road districts make an annual report to the county in August of every year. Again, I'll focus on the chart. We only had 1 of 7 special road districts make that report last year. And on a technical basis by statute, the county is actually not authorized to make any payments after August if it did not receive that report. We did that anyway, and that's been our practice for years. So I really want to, with this audit, try and start that conversation with our road districts, not only on the settlements, but also on this compliance piece. To me, that's important for transparency as a good practice. And that was the Liberty Special Road District reported in April. So some were a little late. A couple I noticed had no report at all. I reached out to those special road districts. They immediately gave us those reports. understandably so. 2 of them weren't in the format, or actually weren't delivered to the county. They were on the state auditor office's website as a financial statement report under a different section of statute. And it's in the same format. It's itemized by revenue expenditures, but it isn't signed by the board, and so it doesn't meet the technical requirements of that. So I reached out to those districts as well. One agreed to do that, and the other, I didn't get a response. However, we are the fiscal agent for that road district, so we have all that information. We have their bank statements. So I didn't see much of a concern there. But it is worth noting that all these special road districts are separate entities. They're filled by volunteer people who run for these road districts, don't receive pay. So it's, and people are always upset about their roads. So to be clear, I mean, this is a big job and, maybe a thankless job. But I will say that it's often the case that the cities are the ones actually doing the financials for the road districts because they just don't have the means to do so. And so I found that in a lot of cases that I had to go to the city to make sure the road district was doing that. So that might be an area or an idea of improvement, and maybe the county assists with that, some things to think about. But it basically defeats the purpose of transparency, and it defeats being able to cooperate as a county, to look at road projects across the county if we don't know what's going on. In fact, some of these reports, even the ones we got, it's supposed to itemize by expenditures, but it just says road maintenance and construction, $200,000. So that's not really, to my mind, meets what the statute envisioned as passed by the legislature. So I think that needs quite a lot of work. Now they have all committed to do that by August of this year, so we'll keep an eye to that. And then finally, real quickly, I looked at just kind of what are the largest recipients of our funding, and believe it or not, I'm not picking on Kansas City, but the reality is they are our largest recipient under the settlement agreements at 14 cents, and they don't even have a road district. They are 25%, remember that formula, just the 25%, not even the 80% with the road district, and that's just the disproportionate share of our assessed valuation with the city of Kansas City is a reason for that. And because of that, to me, that presents a risk because they aren't required to give that annual report. This is nearly a third of our road levy goes to Kansas City, and we don't know what happens with it. And so I asked, unless we ask, and I asked, I didn't get an initial response, but I did. They cooperated. I know they have tons of stuff going on. But essentially, they clearly itemized it, and most of it went to I-435 and Parvin for the most recent years I selected. So maybe that's a way too, in opening discussion of, hey, Kansas City, provide us an annual report just so we can work together. So again, I know this is a touchy subject. Certainly probably was a decade ago, but from where I sit as a county officer, I think it presents an ongoing budget issue for us, and there's not much cooperation. So the purpose of this audit was not to point fingers, it was to hopefully point us continuing on the right direction. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. A lot of information, a little overloaded in a way. How sustainable is what we are doing in your estimation, just if you're looking at that? And I'm not sure if you mentioned if the state auditor weighed in at all on this issue in her recent report. I don't know that she did, but I may have missed it.
The state audit did not. I tried to make an effort, especially now that I know the state audit findings, to really leave that territory for them, especially if they have a follow-up audit, which they most likely will. But no, state audit did not mention it specifically. It did mention some other portions of our relations with external parties, not road districts, however. And as to, again, I think we do well when we look back at that chart. We still net about $1 million on the property tax component. So even at 0697, we're netting $1 million above our 14-cent obligation. But every year, property values go up, which they will likely continue to do so. for the foreseeable future, we have to continue to roll back by Hancock. You know, we were stuck at 8 cents from 2015 to 2019, but especially now, as the housing market has turned up, we're aggressively having to roll back, and already, like I said, the sales tax component makes it a wash. So I could very easily see, and I could project that out, but if we get to 6 cents or below, we could be at a place where we're at a net loss with our road levy, our own road levy. So.
And that was kind of what I was looking for. Was there a sort of a point where it wasn't just diminishing returns, but where we were actually running into negative numbers? And so you're saying around, if we were to reach around 6 cents, we might find ourselves in that territory?
I did not go to that, but I can, there are a lot of things that go into that as far as, what is the future assessed valuation as well. So I could dig into that a little more, but that was kind of a hypothetical there. So I didn't do that in this particular report. But, right now we sit at $200,000 out of 3.7 million is all we see. Now that's including the sales tax annual payment. But.
Commissioner Carpenter, did you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't, other than I'm very grateful for this audit and the report and your presentation. I think it's, as you say, a thing to be attentive to as we go forward. Thank you.
I think it's something that, now that we have this report in hand, something I think we need to drill down a little bit on so that we can sort of digest the amount of information you gave us. Certainly appreciate that. Are there any other comments or questions from staff or anyone else on this issue for the discussion? Seeing none. That brings us to comments on agenda items not on the agenda. Are there any comments on agenda items not on this evening's agenda from either public office holders or agencies? Seeing none, that brings us to County Administrator. Do you have any comments you'd like to make at this time, Administrator?
No, I have none, thank you.
Commissioner comments? Commissioner Carpenter?
No comments, thanks.
I have no comments to make either. That brings us to approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes before us. Is there a motion related to those 3 sets of minutes?
Commissioner, I move that we approve the minutes from Wednesday, January 19, Wednesday, January 24, and Monday, January 24, and Wednesday, January 26.
Motion has been made for the approval of the minutes over Wednesday, January 19, 2022, 2 p.m., Monday, January 24, 2022, 10:30 a.m., Wednesday, January 26, 2022, 6 p.m. Discussion, seeing none, you will recognize the close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
And Commissioner Nolte?
Yes. Brings us to written reports to the commission.
Okay, thank you.
There are no written reports submitted at this time. That brings us to executive sessions. There are none. And then we are now adjourned. Thank you very much.